Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the virtual Canadian HR conference. Joining me in this session is Frank Newman. He is the founder and CEO of Newman Human Resources Consulting. Frank has been helping businesses get the best results from their people for over 40 years. His practical, non-nonsense approach and coaching focus has enabled owners and managers to solve their most complex and difficult people issues. Whether it's a startup business or a well-established organization, he develops people solutions that are legally compliant, and sensitive to your business culture. He helps clients with staffing issues, recruitment, HR policies and practices, performance management, compensation and benefits, as well as sensitive issues such as harassment and conflict resolution disputes. Thank you, Frank, for presenting today. And I just want to reiterate, if everyone is able to use the chat section on the right hand of the screen to communicate with Frank, we really encourage everyone to ask a lot of questions throughout the presentation and at the end. And I hope everyone enjoys Frank's presentation today. And I think, Frank, you've spoken at our events in the past, I believe.
Yes, I think I've done a couple for you guys, so it's been a great experience. Welcome everyone. I am delighted you're all here today. And over the last few weeks and months, we've heard more about holding back the tsunami. And the tsunami, of course, is the wave of resignations and turnover that we're seeing, which is absolutely unprecedented. And they've talked about this for years, but now it's really arrived. And what I want to do today was talk a little bit about what it is, why it's happening, and what we can do with our companies and our clients to mitigate this. So just a little bit about myself. So that was a great introduction, which I wrote originally, so it still works. I've been in HR for about 40 years, and my company does a wide variety of HR services for small to medium-sized business, everything from performance management to recruiting, comp and benefits, and investigations. So we've seen pretty well everything, but the last 18 months have shown us even more unusual things in the workplace. So what we want to spend some time today with you as HR leaders and as recruiters is kind of understanding what's happening, why you're seeing the resignations you're seeing, and how we can mitigate that. And I have about 50 to 60 clients at this point in time, and we've just seen some unexpected resignations that really we had not anticipated. I had one company had 3 people resign in BC overnight, not for any particular reason. I've had clients in Ingersoll, London, and so on. Surprising resignations. And so this is a challenge because, as many of you know, as recruiters, it's hard to find good people. So how can we understand what's happening in the workplace now, and how can we work to mitigate that? So when I'm doing live presentations, I would always do what I call a pulse check just to see how are people doing. And basically, as I do that in this day and age today, we see all the reactions on the screen. So we see people who are optimistic, who are excited about things, but also, HR staff and their managers are exhausted. I mean, this has been a frustrating period depending on where your business is. So we're seeing lots of tension in the workplace, some excitement, and there's that tremendous balance in the workplace. And so what I've described it as, I call this the fragile society, because we have been pulled and pushed over different issues over the last few weeks and months, and it's a very brittle world. And as a result, when things are brittle, when they're fragile, things break, things shift very quickly and unexpectedly. So if we think about what's been happening, obviously we've seen a changing world of work. So we have people now communicating by Zoom, which is a wonderful thing, except if you have Zoom fatigue. We've been dealing with COVID, which has affected our lives, which has affected our loved ones, our children. At the same point, we've seen social change as well. So we've seen the Indigenous rights being more prominent. We've recognized the hardship that's happened there. We've seen Black Lives Matter change the face of work. And we've also seen respect for gay rights and other rights. So we've seen a whole configuration. It's almost what I call a perfect storm converging on the workplace. And as a result, people are reassessing what they're doing, where they're working. And so for many people, as I've talked to them, and I do recruiting a lot myself, for many people, this whole last 18 months, last 2 years has been time to think about a new job. People are reassessing their personal goals. They're saying, do I want to continue in this type of career? My father put me in this business, or whatever that is. And we've seen that both at the business level, in terms of leadership, but also at the employee level. We've seen people challenge where they live. I've had people move from downtown Toronto up to Chatsworth, which is a little bit north of where I am here in Breslau, but right out in the country. And he says it's the best things in sliced bread, but he never would have thought about it before COVID. Certainly, a lot of people are really looking at their work-life balance in terms of how much they're on the computer, how much they're in the office. People don't want to travel anymore. So again, that has shifted that whole perspective on things. And I think too, COVID has made people rethink about, where do I want to be spending the next 20 years of my life? What is my legacy? Certainly, company culture has been a dominant feature throughout this whole environment, because as companies have behaved, so people have been watching. And, people remember how they've been treated. And if companies didn't manage their culture during the start of COVID, it's certainly going to reflect long-term in terms of people staying with their organization or not. And then to add to that, we've now got people who are being asked to return to the office after they've been working from home or working part home. And so their expectations may be filled with dread and fear. And I've had that. I've had people, leave jobs because they can't face going back into the office. They don't feel safe. And then finally, you've got companies now with vaccine policies that says, either you be vaccinated and come into the office or you're gone. And so people are making choices on that. So clearly there's a lot of things changing. And then on the other hand, we've also got this great skill shortage. So people know they can get a job much easier than they could have in the past. So all these conditions are affecting people's decision making. So clearly the ways of work have changed. And I have this picture here of the Industrial Revolution. And I think as HR people, we've really seen as big a change now as they saw in the Industrial Revolution in terms of ways of working, in terms of the way we communicate, in terms of the type of work we do, in terms of our networks. So this has really been very, very dramatic. And so on an individual basis, we've seen a lot of things change. Certainly, expectations of business have changed. I have work from home, but it could be work from anywhere. And people are now expecting that. And more people are expecting that as a right. I expect the right to be able to work from home. I don't expect to be directed to come into the office. Now, it may be that your office does need people in there, but certainly there is an expectation that business will adapt to that. And certainly a lot of people are expecting to have hybrid work arrangements now, where they're in the office 2 or 3 days a week. And also, certainly benefits have changed. The expectation for your benefits plan now is that it includes some sort of mental health support component, like an employee assistance plan. The other thing we're seeing too is what I call the extreme agility. So we're really in the gig economy, where we have more and more young professionals who are skilled, who are saying, I don't want to work for a large corporation anymore. I am now going to work for myself. I am now going to be an independent contributor, or I'll set up my own business. So certainly people have more opportunities there, because for $2,000, you can create a website and you can do a Shopify site. And again, you can create your own business, whatever that is. Another factor that's come into this for people is around, is your business an essential or a non-essential business? And that has made people make decisions from a security point of view, because I'd much rather be in an essential business than in a non-essential one. So regardless of how good your employee profile might be, again, if you're in a non-essential business, that may be hard for people to want to spend a lifetime career there. And also, individuals are becoming more conscious about being employable versus being employed. So employable means that you have a wide range of skills and talents you can use anywhere, versus employed, where you're simply going to be locked into one company. And then finally, we have what I call the age of the entrepreneur. As I say, almost anyone can create their own business now in a matter of minutes. And so we have to be conscious of that and finding ways to endeavor people within our own companies to be internal entrepreneurs as well. So all of that information has really said the world is changing. It's going to be hard to keep a hold of people. So the challenge then is for us in HR, how do we maintain those people? How do we keep those great people here? And so we're going to talk about that, and I'll share some thoughts with you. The key thing that we can do as HR leaders is making sure that we connect with people. Particularly as people working in hybrid work arrangements, we've seen less of them. And so it's really important for managers and coworkers to understand what's happening with your team. And not just on a business side, but also on a personal side. Because as much as we're seeing insights into people's homes and backgrounds, we don't necessarily know what's happening in their personal life. Perhaps they've had a loss of a family member. Perhaps they've had a loss of income, perhaps with their spouse. So the more and more that people can connect right now and force leaders out of their shells is going to be really important. And making sure you're using both kind of informal and formal communication processes. And I think it really is about connecting ideally on a one-on-one basis. A lot of my clients are doing kind of virtual team meetings, and those are very, very good. We do birthday parties on them. We actually did a memorial for someone who passed away on Zoom. And again, those are important, but again, you want to get down to the individual communication. It's what's behind the smiling face on Zoom that we want to understand. The other thing that's struck me as a bit of a surprise is more and more people I talk to are keen to have performance reviews. And depending on your organization, you may have a very good process for that. But certainly if your performance review process is weak or has dropped off because of COVID, make sure you rev that up, because people are really looking at feedback and they're expecting it these days. And you really can't get away from that. And certainly, I've seen lots of people leave organizations because they felt people didn't care about them. And so that's been a challenge. The other interesting challenge now is what I call be visible. And that is really coming back to that idea of, as leaders and as HR people, we need to be present. We need to be in touch with people. One of my clients is a restaurant chain, and they have 6 different outlets. And one of the challenges the HR people have had is just getting to them during COVID and even finding people there. And so they've had to kind of redouble their efforts to make sure HR shows up periodically at each of the restaurants at different times. The other thing that people are looking for right now, as in any other time when you need a great leader, is for people to be authentic. And in many cases, that means not just talking about your background, but talking about your concerns and your worries. And I remember one time we were announcing a plant closure, and I was talking to the VP just before he announced it. And he said, "Frank, I couldn't sleep last night. I was so worried about this." And I said to him, share that with the group. Let them know that you care. And he did. He shared his concerns, his dreams, his anxiety. And that disclosure made things much more powerful for people, so they were able to relate to him, and the closure went much better than expected. And then finally, being visible means demonstrating that you care. So it's finding time for people. It's making yourself available. It's really understanding, is there a doubt in someone's mind about, should I stay with the company? And so if you're not visible, if you're not there and paying attention, you may miss those clues. On the formal side, this is actually a great time to re-energize your engagement survey. We've done these for many, many years, but I think now more than ever, finding ways to get that information from people, calibrating that, making sure you're working on the right things, because we've had so much change to HR policies, whether it's COVID or whether it's compensation policies. Now we've got new minimum hourly wages coming in. We've had so much change. It's worthwhile to step back and get a good diagnosis of your environment, because it's easy to get sidetracked down a rabbit hole looking after whether it's a benefits issue or whatever. But I think you need to step back and get your big picture so that you can focus your energies on the right methodology. One of the products that we really like is the Best Place to Work organization, where you can conduct your what they call the trust survey. And at the same time, depending on your score, you'll actually get publicly recognized. And again, that helps your brand. And so my clients that have done that have found that to be very powerful. And at the same time, they get the feedback, but they also get the recognition, which then helps them with their talent management. I've talked a little bit about performance reviews, but this is also a good time to step back and look at it from 40,000 feet up and say, let's do a formal talent review where we're taking all those performance data, that information, putting that into an overall summary and saying, okay, how are people doing? Who are our key talent? Who can we not afford to lose? And then making sure you develop plans for those people, because often the people that are highest on your talent list are probably the most mobile and the most desirable for your competitors. So make sure you're having those conversations with those people in particular and develop plans for them. And when we're thinking about development plans, a lot of people automatically assume development plans are taking people on a course or a program, or you send them off to Queens or whatever that is. But in many respects, 98% of development takes place on the job. So it's having people sit on committees. It's having them explore a new product. It's having them do some research. And again, so be innovative in those development plans because they don't have to cost a lot of money. But again, it's connecting with people. It's knowing how to keep your key talent. And because people want to be developed. And as we've cut back in many cases on training, having those development plans really sends that message that I care. And certainly if you have a great development plan ahead of you, it's much harder to leave an organization. So as we talk about engagement surveys and that, the other piece is certainly to think about how robust is your culture. And I like this picture, this dead plant here, because I have seen the occasional culture like that. And so as you all know, culture is not just the mission statement, but it's the accepted values and behaviors that are demonstrated every single day in the workplace. And one of the things that's been very evident in the last few weeks and months is that cultures are changing rapidly. We've shifted to hybrid cultures. We've now changed the way we do distribution. We do lots of different things. And so again, making sure that your culture is reflecting where you are today and where you want to go is really important. And keeping that competitive, because obviously, we're dealing for talent with many smart companies, and many of you are those people that are on this call here. So how do you make sure your culture is competitive in terms of appreciating people's needs, appreciating diversity, and having that right image, but also those behaviors to attract and keep people? So ultimately, you may do all that, and people still say, "Well, I've had enough, Frank. I'm off. I'm leaving." And so one of the things I often debate, and we look forward for any feedback on the chat line, is if somebody announces they're leaving, do you make that counter offer? Do you say, "Well, John, you're leaving us," or Amit, "You're leaving us. We'll do something to keep you"? And I'd be interested in the chat line on your experiences with counter offers. Typically, I've found if you have a counter offer and it's based on salary only, the person may stay, but generally they're gone within 2 years. So if you are going to make a counter offer to someone who's leaving, typically it has to be around something that's not compensation related. So it may be more related to the level of the job, the development, the nature of the job, or it could be the working conditions. So those are the opportunities you may have to have a successful counteroffer. But certainly if it's just a matter of money, you're best to say adios. And then again, obviously, if people are leaving, if they're reasonable talent, I always say keep the door open because you never know when people are going to come back. And often, we've had people leave my clients, and they've come back 6 months later and said, the grass was greener on the other side. I'd like to come back. And in many cases, those are actually great advocates to bring back to your organization. I call them second bouncers. So they bounce in and they bounce back out. But again, they're often, if they do come back and they are a good performer, they're often the best advocates for you. And that really comes down to the point of, regardless of somebody leaving, you still want them to leave as an ambassador for the organization. So you want to treat them with respect and dignity, regardless of how they're leaving. And then finally, we've been doing more exit interviews in the last few months than I've ever done. And, having a good exit interview process can be invaluable, particularly if you're having a sudden surge in exits. Use that as a tool. It's often forgotten. The other piece, once as people are leaving, make sure, as some of the other presentation was saying, make sure you look at your talent brand. Make sure it's current if you're going to be bringing people back in here. Look at your websites, manage your marketing campaign, and manage social media. And certainly social media is key for any recruiting activity. But again, managing that is important for your reputation. And I recently had 3 former employees from one of my clients who left and wrote a 19-page scathing review on Facebook about the company. And it wasn't necessarily all true, but certainly it had a devastating impact. So again, monitor your social media, particularly anything around your talent and your employment brand. So I guess as we start to wrap up, so survival at this point in time, keeping those great people really means 3 things. It means, keep listening to people, make sure you've got your antenna out, make sure you're sensitive to people disengaging from activities or meetings, make sure you keep them engaged. So find ways to stimulate the work, provide people with interesting work. And then finally, you really want to keep adapting because as we've all known, we've had to adapt in many, many ways through this pandemic. And we want to continue to do that because that's going to ensure that we're here for the future. Calm seas ahead. Well, I'm not sure we can guarantee that. I think the secret for many HR people will be to be adaptive, be responsive, and also to be courageous so that we can confront those challenges that come at us, so that we can address the issues in an organization that lead to resignations, and that we can have the confidence in our own abilities to make sure we can weather the tsunami of change that is still not quite finished yet. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time and your patience listening to me here. And we got some time for questions on the chat line. And I just want to thank you again. And that's my contact information. Delighted to have a chat with anyone at any time. And, if you ever want a second opinion on a difficult HR issue, I'm more than happy to pick up the phone and share an experience or two. So with that, I'll stop sharing the screen and see where this goes. There we go. Oh, okay, very good. Okay. Very good. So we have some comments. So any questions for people on thoughts around counteroffers? Very good. Yes, you're right, Paula. It is pretty tough. Yes, if you make the counteroffer, they probably missed the boat at some point. Well, I think we're just about out of time here, but I do want to thank everyone for their patience today. And we're getting used to these Zoom presentations, but and as I say, it's an interesting world we live in.
Hi, Frank.
Yeah, hi there.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just before you finish up your presentation, are you able to leave your contact information in the chat, just in case
yes.
if anyone wants to contact you?
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
That's the only thing just before you finish off here.
Yeah. If I can spell.
Just check here in the sessions. Okay, perfect. And where can people find you on LinkedIn? I don't know if you have your link at all.
Oh, yes.
Or your LinkedIn profile, if you could add that just as well.
Yeah, it's probably just LinkedIn at Frank. And I think it's Frank Newman. I'm probably the number one Newman there anyway. So.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So we have about 5 minutes until we have our next session that starts at 3 o'clock. So within that 5 minutes, if you wanted to, you're able to go over into the networking area, Frank and anyone else watching the session, and connect with others at the event. And yeah, we have our session starting at 3 o'clock, and then we have our panel starting at 3:30 on the main stage that will be moderated by Rachel. So thank you again, Frank, for your presentation, and thanks everyone so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. I'll see you in the networking area.